Noah Gragson will join Stewart-Haas Racing in 2024. Shane Van Gisbergen has revealed his 2024 NASCAR plans, and Joe Gibbs Racing has revealed their 2024 NASCAR Xfinity Series lineup. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. Let's first go ahead and take a look at a couple paint schemes that have been revealed for 2024. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Sammy Smith's 2024 TMC scheme. This paint scheme looks really solid in my opinion. I like the colors. It kind of looks very similar to the TMC scheme that he had in 2023. I like the colors, and it looks pretty good in my opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chase Elliott's 2024 Lumar scheme that we're going to see in a couple races in 2024. Everything about the scheme I like except the blue number. I wish the number was white. If the number was white, it would look so much better. I don't like the blue number, but that's just my honest opinion about that. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Zane Smith's 2024 WeatherTech scheme. I actually like this paint scheme quite a bit. I like the red number. I like the big W on the front of the car. There's a lot of good things I like about the scheme. And overall, in general, I think this is some pretty good paint schemes that we got for 2024. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Pi Barker Fire and Solutions. As it was first reported by Joseph Straley that Pi Barker will sponsor John Hunter Nemechek once again in 2024. They're going to sponsor him for 4 Cup Series races at Legacy Motor Club, and then, of course, will sponsor for 3 Xfinity Series races with Joe Gibbs Racing. Really good to see that Pi Barker is going to be continuing their relationship with John Hunter Nemechek. They've been sponsoring him since back in 2021 when he drove for KBM. So it's really good to see another company once again continue to work their long-term relationship with John Hunter Nemechek. Really exciting and really awesome stuff overall, to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Castor. As it was reported and announced and first reported by Adam Stern, the Hendrick has signed Castor to be its official performance sportswear partner through 2028. Castor does have relationships with Red Bull, but this is the first time that Castor is going to be working with a NASCAR Cup Series team. There's been some of the merchandise revealed that you will be able to see, and I have to say that some of this merchandise looks really awesome and really cool, but I think the prices are a little bit overpriced in my opinion, but they still do look pretty good overall. Nonetheless, really cool to see that Hendrick Motorsports and Castor are going to be working together starting in 2024. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Toyota. As it was officially announced on Tuesday that Toyota will partner with Lee Pullman Racing in 2024. And Isabella Robusto will drive a majority races with Lee Pullman Racing in 2024. This is really cool to see. Lee Pullman Racing has been in late models for many years. And Isabella Robusto, I believe she's only 17 years old. So she has a lot of talent. Obviously, I don't believe she turns 18 until next year. So that's why she will not be running the full season. She has to, I believe, to be eligible to run full time, you have to be 18 years old. So nonetheless, this is really a great opportunity for her. I'm glad to see that she, in fact, will be able to run with Lee Pullman Racing in 2024. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about North Wilkesboro. As they put out a tweet, I believe, on Wednesday night confirming that the repave that they've been working on is officially complete. I have to say, looking for some of the images and the videos that have surfaced from North Wilkesboro's page, these look really awesome, and I love the repave that they've done. Obviously, they want to talk about them doing a repave all the way back to a few months ago, and they finally got it done because this is the first repave that North Wilkesboro's had since 1981. They had issues. As much as I would have loved to see the surface that they've had continued going, they had to get it repaved because, in my personal opinion, if they didn't repave the track, they're going to have more issues. And I hope with the new repave, the racing can get better. But we'll see what happens. Repaves generally don't do as good unless you're like Darlington. But I think there's a chance that this repave could really work out for this series and for NASCAR and all the series that are looking to go there in the future. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about IndyCar. As it was reported by Racer.com's Marshall Pruitt that IndyCar is continuing to work on developing an IndyCar version of NASCAR's charter system. Now, this is not the only series that's been talked about adding some sort of charter system to their series. High Limit is looking to add a charter system by 2026, and obviously NASCAR is looking to extend their charter system they've had since 2016. And according to Marshall Pruitt, it would be very similar to the old car charter system that they had back in the 1980s and the 1990s. Look, IndyCar's got a lot of problems on their own currently at the moment, and adding a charter system, having locked-in drivers in the field, I kind of understand it, but at the same token, same time, I have a really bad feeling that this is going to affect basically the biggest race for IndyCar, which is the Indy 500, and having locked-in entries for the Indy 500 is going to kill the Indy 500 as we know it. So I really hope that if they are going to add a charter system, that it doesn't affect the Indy 500. But I have a really bad and a terrible feeling that this, unfortunately, is going to affect their base. I think it's unfortunately going to affect the Indy 500, which is really unfortunate, and I think that's a really bad move if they are to do that. So we'll see what happens in regards to that when it comes to IndyCar's charter system, if they're going to add it. But in my personal opinion, this is going to be, once again, another issue with the Penske group that we'll talk about here in just a little bit. Nonetheless, though, there's a lot of talk about IndyCar working on a charter system once again. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Chicago Street Course. As it was reported by Bob Pockers that NASCAR will now allow both Xfinity Series and Cup Series drivers to run both races at the Chicago Street Course in 2024. Remember, for 2023, they were not able to run both races because they didn't want a driver that was going to run in both series to have a big advantage. Now, with both series having experience at the racetrack, it makes a lot of sense why they've gone ahead and done this. Overall, I think this is a very, very good decision from NASCAR's sake, because obviously we're going to talk about Shane Van Gisbergen, and he's actually going to run both races in 2024. But in general, I think this is a very, very solid and a really, really good move for NASCAR's part. I think they're making the right decision here, and in my personal opinion, I'm glad to see that they will be allowing both series to have both drivers. There's going to be a lot of potential crossover branding, especially with the Xfinity Series being completely stacked next year in 2024, and having some of those guys run the Cup race. I think it's going to make both these events really, really exciting. Nonetheless, this is really exciting, and glad to see that both races will have eligibility, and the Chicago Street Course will have both series of VOD. I think it's really exciting and really good stuff, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about IndyCar. Now, yesterday it was reported by Adam Stern, and it was from a Racer.com article, I believe, that there is a growing number of teams and drivers lamenting IndyCar series of fumbled opportunities, setbacks, disembarrassing decisions, or gambles that have culminated into IndyCar's and Honda's demise. This is really, really kind of something that doesn't surprise me. Obviously, IndyCars are making a lot of moves that have really frustrated a lot of people, including Honda, to the point now where you have Honda who is threatening to potentially leave IndyCar at the end of 2026 if they're not able to do some current cost-cutting measures, or if they're not able to get a new manufacturer in the sport. And this gets a lot of growing concern from a lot of people in the industry, and it really puts IndyCar in a bad position. If they're not able to figure out what they're doing here in the not-so-distant future, I think IndyCar, as we know, which IndyCar, in my opinion, has put on some really good racing over the last few years, if they don't figure this out soon enough, things are going to be looking very, very bad for IndyCar. So I really hope they're able to get this under control and get this stuff figured out, because in my personal opinion, if they're not able to get this under control, things are not going to be looking very, very well for IndyCar long term. Just, it's frustrating to hear everything going on, but there's a lot of concern, and it doesn't surprise or shock me. There's a lot of concern when it comes to IndyCar and its future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about North Wilkesboro. Now, Jeff Hammond, who I think has been working with the S-Trex as of recently, asked a question to the president of the S-Trex, Don Hawk, about potentially going to North Wilkesboro. And Don Hawk says that they had talked about going to North Wilkesboro and they could add a 7th race in the near future. But we're kind of waiting on the repaint to get done and see what the people that are making decisions at North Wilkesboro would decide in regards to the future of that track. This is honestly really cool to hear that they've had talks, conversations, and maybe could add a 7th race in the near future. And I honestly would love to see the S-Trex go to North Wilkesboro and kind of join up with the NASCAR Cup Series weekend, or kind of join up with some of these late model weekends, especially with the Cars Late Model Tour, because North Wilkesboro has been making some big moves over the last year or two. They've just done the repave vest recently. We kind of talked about that here a few minutes ago. But overall, in general, I think this is really exciting to hear, and some pretty good news to hear that the SRX having talks and conversations about potentially heading North Wilkesboro in the not-so-distant future. And I think a lot of his fans, including myself, would agree that the SRX racing in North Wilkesboro would be really fun and really awesome. And then potentially bringing some of the Cup guys in, guys like Kyle Larson, Kyle Busch racing the SRX, guys like Chase Elliott coming back and racing in it. I think it'd be really fun and awesome to see those guys come out and race at North Wilkesboro. So nonetheless, I really hope it happens that SRX does in fact go to North Wilkesboro. I think it's really exciting. There's talks, conversation about it, and nonetheless pretty good to hear that the SRX may in fact be headed to North Wilkesboro in the near future, but right now they're holding off on doing that at the moment until things get done. But it sounds like maybe not too far down the road, they may be headed to North Wilkesboro. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jason Burdett. As it was announced on Tuesday that Jason Burdett will crew chief for Jimmie Johnson in 2024 in the NASCAR Cup Series. It was announced a few weeks ago that Jason Burdett was not going to be returned to crew chief for Brandon Jones, and of course now we know that he's headed over to work with Jimmie Johnson in 2024. This is really, really exciting news. Jason Burdett has been a veteran in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and I believe also crew chief for Justin Allgaier in the 2 years he raced in the NASCAR Cup Series as well in 2014 and 2015. So I think this is a really exciting and great opportunity for Jason Burdett going into 2024. Now, Jason Burdett is going to be full-time at Legacy Motor Cup. Jimmie Johnson's schedule is still to be announced at this point. Of course, we know 3 of the races that Jimmie Johnson is going to run. He's going to run at Kansas, he's going to run at Texas, and also going to run the Coca-Cola 600. I would imagine that Jimmie's more than likely going to run the Daytona 500, probably going to end up running the Chicago Street Course race, may end up running the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro. Potentially, he would be eligible to run that. Maybe Jimmie decides to run the LA Coliseum. That could certainly be a possibility and an option that could come up for Jimmie Johnson in the near future. Nonetheless, so I think this is an exciting opportunity, and I'm very happy to hear that Jason Burdett will be crew chiefing for Jimmie Johnson. What's really cool is Jimmie Johnson put a photo on his social media showing that Jason has worked with Jimmie Johnson in the past, all the way back to 2002, when he's a crew member on Jimmie Johnson's 2002 NASCAR Cup Series team when he made his first season with the team. So this is really fun, and I'm glad to see that Jason Burdett will be working with Jimmie Johnson in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Alex Bowman. Now, Alex Bowman was most recently on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, I believe, on Wednesday morning, and he confirms that he will not be doing any more wing sprint car races in the future. Now, he could do the World of Outlaws when he retires. He mentioned this, but right now the reason he is not going to be doing any more wing sprint car races, including World of Outlaws or high limit races in the future, is because, one, he made the decision for himself, but number two, the team kind of made the decision for him as well. The biggest reason Alex Bowman has decided to back off on doing sprint car races is because of the fact of the crashes that he had recently. Remember, I believe it was back in April or May of 2023 that he was involved in a sprint car accident, I believe at Lawrenceburg, Kansas, in a high limit racing series, and basically he had a broken L3 vertebrae back injury, unfortunately. And he had to miss 4 or 5 weeks because of that. And this is now the second year in a row that Alex Bowman actually missed races, because remember, in the Cup Series race at Texas Motor Speedway near the end of the season, Alex Bowman missed most of the rest of the year and only came back for the final race of the season. Before the back injury and before that sprint car race had happened, Alex Bowman had been actually up front competing for the points and was leading the standings at one point early in the season. But unfortunately, after that crash happened, he never seemed to be the same. He only had like 2 or 3 top 10s the rest of the year after coming back. He only had 1 top 5 and like 3 or 4 top 10s by the end of the season. So in general, when it comes to this, it's not surprising that he has made the decision. And overall, I think it's better to be safe than sorry when it comes to these situations. And I think health and safety is the number one priority for everybody in this situation. So nonetheless, it's disappointing to hear that Alex Bowman will not be doing any more sprint car races, at least in the near future. Again, Alex Bowman does have a contract with Henry Motorsports through 2026, but I would imagine he's going to get extended through 2028, which by that point, Alex Bowman, I believe, will be 35 years old. So maybe Bowman does decide to retire at the end of that, but he's, like I said, he's open to potentially doing the World of Outlaws full-time in the future, and honestly, I think a lot of fans would be very, very happy if he was to do the World of Outlaws full-time in the future. And nonetheless, though, it's interesting to hear that he's not going to be doing any sprint car races in the future, but I completely understand why he has made this decision, and we hope for him to get better, and hopefully he'll get to do some of those races in the near future. And I believe he's going to be at the Chili Bowl Nationals working as a team owner, but he will not be behind the wheel of the Wing sprint car at this current moment. So I think he's making the right decision in regards to that. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about horsepower. Now, Bob Fisher, who is the Executive Vice President of ECR Engines, was on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio. And there's obviously been a lot of talk and conversation about could NASCAR add horsepower? Well, Bob Fisher, like I mentioned, says that bumping up a horsepower up to 750 horsepower wouldn't be a huge tear-up for the engine companies. And he says that bumping up to 750, because they've actually ran that horsepower before, said it would not be a massive and major issue. This is now the second engine company who has said that they'd be okay with increasing the horsepower up 100 horsepower. The other guy, Doug Yates from Roush Yates Engines, which all 4 teams use the Roush Yates engine pipeline. So, if they were to bump up horsepower, you've got 2 people who are absolutely for it. For some reason, though, as Bob Fisher mentions, NASCAR is not open to increasing horsepower, which doesn't really make sense to me because if you want the racing to get better, I think adding horsepower is absolutely the right thing. Now, Tyler Reddick kind of went back down about that, saying, you would have to go up to like 1,000 horsepower for it to fully work. But Tyler Reddick's basically been using the simulator, and he hasn't been using like the actual on-track product to see how it works. I feel like the fact that you've got 2 engine builders telling you that if you actually would test it, maybe it would be better. I want to see a next-gen test and see if increasing horsepower would not be a bad solution. At this point, what's the point of waiting around at this point? Why not just go ahead and try to test it out and see if it's going to work? If it doesn't really make the racing better and it doesn't make the on-track product better after the test, then at least now we know that it isn't going to work. But NASCAR, for whatever reason, they'll test everything and they'll try anything but increase in the horsepower. And at this point, there's a lot of frustration from the fans, from the teams, from the drivers, and even some engine builders about doing it. Again, it's not going to cost that much money to go up to 750 horsepower. And I think the short track product, in my opinion, if they were to increase it up to 750 horsepower, I think the racing would get a lot better on the short tracks and the road courses, because that's the types of race tracks that really did well in the Gen 6 era. Now in this era of NASCAR, the next gen era, the short tracks and the road courses have completely struggled. But I want to see confirmation and proof that if it's good or a bad thing. And I'm just sick and tired of seeing all this frustration. I think a lot of fans want to see how it's going to perform. So hopefully maybe NASCAR will come in and listen to what the drivers and the people working in the industry want. We want to see increased horsepower because I think we could definitely see better racing on the track. I understand that NASCAR doesn't want it because they want to save money, which they do is cost-cutting stuff. But at this point, let's just go ahead and try it and see if it works, because if it does end up working, I think the racing itself is going to end up getting a lot better than it currently is at this particular moment. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about ThorSport Racing. As ThorSport Racing has revealed their 2024 NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series lineup. Jake Garcia, who was announced a few weeks ago that he'd be joining ThorSport Racing, will drive the number 13 truck for ThorSport Racing in 2024. Connor Jones is going to drive the 6.6 truck for ThorSport Racing on a part-time basis in 2024. It was never clear how many races that he will be driving that 6.6 car, but I imagine he'll run a majority season. He cannot run the full season because he doesn't turn 18 until the middle of the year, so that's why he's not going to be full-time. Matt Crafton, no surprise, will be back in the number 88 truck for ThorSport Racing in 2024. Ty Majeski will be back in the number 98 truck for ThorSport Racing, and Ben Rose will be in the 99 truck once again. So really the only thing that's changing for ThorSport Racing in 2024 is that Jake Garcia is replacing Haley Deegan. Now, I don't believe his crew chief has been announced, but I imagine the crew chief, Brian Ross, is likely going to be crew chief in the 13th truck, and I think all the other crew chiefs that had worked with ThorSport Racing and the drivers they work with in 2023 will probably once again work with their set drivers in 2024. But this is a very, very solid combination in solid lineups. I think the best four-wing driver will probably be Ty Majeski. I know Ben Rose did win most recently win the championship, so I think Ben Rose could get a couple wins in 2024. Ty Majeski did end up winning one race in 2023, and that was, of course, at IRP, but near the end of the year, they got in a lot of trouble. They were making some tire decisions that you're not supposed to do. They were messing with certain parts that cost them near the end of the year. Matt Crafton obviously got in that fight with Nick Sanchez. Hopefully that does end up happening between him and Nick Sanchez once again, because Nick Sanchez is back with Rev Racing in 2024 in the Truck Series. And Connor Jones, I don't know why he's back with this team. I know he has a multi-year deal with this organization, but personally, I really wish that Connor Jones was not racing with his team, because he's just someone who always seems to wreck equipment. And then, of course, Jake Garcia, I think, is a very talented driver, and I think he is going to get his first career Truck Series victory in 2024. And I think for sure, no disrespect to Haley Deegan, but I think that being Jake Garcia, he's going to have a much better year in 2024 than what Haley Deegan had in 2023. Unlike where she struggled to contend for top 10s and top 15s on a week-by-week basis, Jake Garcia, I think, will be contending for top 10s, top 5s, and maybe even wins throughout the year. Nonetheless, it's a very solid lineup, and glad to see that Thorsville Racing has finally revealed their 2024 NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series lineup headed, because they usually wait till like January, so this is a little earlier than normal, but good to see that their lineup has been officially unveiled. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Lane Riggs. As it was announced yesterday that Lane Riggs will be joining Front Row Motorsports in 2024 in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, driving the number 38 truck. And according to reports, it is a multi-year deal. Dylan Capello, who had been the engineer for this 38 truck, is going to be the crew chief. And Chris Loss, who had been the crew chief of this 38 truck, will be working as a consultant and will be there to help out the Front Row organization, also be helping Dylan Capello transform into a really good crew chief. This is a really surprising decision, if you ask me, but a really good decision. When I think of Lane Riggs is a really talented race car driver. He can get the best out of equipment and performs at the best of his abilities. And I think that Lane Riggs is going to surprise a lot of people in a big way. I think he's got a really good chance to make the championship for this year in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series or 2024. And I think that he will get his first win. In fact, I think he's going to get a couple victories in 2024, considering the fact that I think that this team was really, really strong throughout the year. They kind of fell off in the second half of the year, but I think that Front Row Motorsports is going to be really, really competitive. Lane Riggs had some really strong performances in the Truck Series. He ran really good with Spire earlier in the year, and in general, we've seen what he can do behind the wheel and how good of a driver he generally is. Now, like I said, what are my expectations of Lane Riggs? I think Lane Riggs is going to do a really solid job in 2024, and in general, I think he's got a really good chance to make the championship for this upcoming season. But I think this is a fantastic opportunity for him. Again, I think this is going to be a really great move for this team. I'm glad to see the Lane Riggs get an opportunity. I'll be honest, I thought it was going to be someone like a Matt DiBenedetto or Brett Moffitt, or maybe even Frankie Muniz was going to get a chance and an opportunity to drive for this team. Lane Riggs, not the driver I saw coming as a potential driver, but honestly, I'm here for a massive shakeup for sure. But nonetheless, again, I'm just very happy to see that a well-deserving driver is getting an opportunity with a pretty good Truck Series team. Front Row's making some big moves, and I think this could long-term, if things work out, we could see Lane Riggs make his Cup Series debut with Front Row in the number 36 car. I'm not saying it's going to happen in 2024, but if he does well enough, this could lead, because Michael McDowell is not going to be around that much longer in the Cup Series. Todd Gillen's got a good future ahead of him, but I think Lane Riggs long-term may end up full-time in their Cup Series program. And I think a lot of people in the industry would, in general, be really happy about that. So nonetheless, this is a really awesome opportunity, and I'm very happy to hear that Lane Riggs will be joining Front Row Motorsports in 2024. I think he's going to make the most out of it, and I'm glad to see he does have a ride for 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of three major stories in today's episode, as we're talking about Shane Van Gisbergen. As Shane Van Gisbergen has revealed his 2024 NASCAR plans. He will run full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2024, driving the number 97 car for Kaulig Racing, and will run 7 NASCAR Cup Series races in 2024. Those 7 races are both Talladega races, the Coca-Cola 600. He's also going to run the Chicago Street Course, also will run at Las Vegas Motor Speedway in the fall, and will also run a few other races in 2024 as well. Now, it was not revealed, but I would also imagine that SVG will likely run some Truck Series races as well in 2024, but that was not announced in the plans today. This is a really good to hear, though. Him running full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, I did not see that coming. But I think it's a really good decision for him to go back and race in the NASCAR Xfinity Series on a full-time basis and try to get experience there, because it's no secret that Shane Van Gisbergen does want to, in fact, go full-time NASCAR Cup Series racing in 2025 with Trackhouse Racing. Now, when it comes to his Cup Series starts, I would imagine that more than likely he is going to end up driving with Trackhouse Racing with either the number 91 car or the 97. That was never officially clear. He also could drive the 16 car, but again, it's still undetermined at this point which one he's going to end up driving for. But again, going back to SVG running full-time for Kaulig in the Xfinity Series, I think that is extremely exciting. And right now, I think Kaulig Racing may end up winning all the road course races in 2024, because you don't just have Shane Van Gisbergen being there full-time, you've got AJ Allmendinger being there full-time as well. And I'm watching those two guys race against each other on road courses for the win. I think is going to be really exciting and very, very fun to watch. Now, I think the biggest thing for him is going to be running full-time, so he's going to be able to get experience at all different types of tracks to see how well he's going to run. Now, what are my expectations for Shane Van Gisbergen in 2024? Well, I think Shane Van Gisbergen will make the playoffs. I think he's going to, because I think he's going to win a race or two in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, both those likely on road courses, and I think he'll run pretty consistent as well. I think he's going to struggle a little bit at the beginning on the ovals, but I think by the end of the year, I think SVG will at least be contending for top 5s and top 10s on a consistent week-by-week basis. Because, let's be real, Kaulig Racing's program has not been as strong in 2023 or previous years as it were back in like 2020 or 2021 when AJ Allmendinger won 5 or 6 races. But I think with SVG and AJ being teammates and Josh Williams being there as well, there's a good chance that all three of these guys could end up making the playoffs. But it's another huge move for the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Having a guy like Shane Van Gisbergen full-time in the Xfinity Series is just continuing to prove why they're the best series right now in NASCAR at this particular moment. But again, I'm very excited about this. I think Shane Van Gisbergen is going to run extremely well next year, and I'm excited to see that he will be full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2024. I'm looking forward to it. I think this is really, really exciting stuff, and I'm glad to see that Shane Van Gisbergen will be running full-time in NASCAR in 2024 in the Xfinity Series. Again, it's unclear if he's going to run with Trackhouse and Cup or Kaulig Racing. He may end up running a 16 car, but again, I am very happy to see that Shane Van Gisbergen is in fact going to be full-time in NASCAR in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next major story of today's episode as we're talking about Joe Gibbs Racing. As on, I believe it was Wednesday morning, Joe Gibbs Racing revealed their 2024 NASCAR Xfinity Series lineup. And there is a lot going on with their NASCAR Xfinity Series team in 2024. First, Sheldon Creed is going to drive the number 18 car in 2024, and Sam McCauley, who had been the engineer for Denny Hamlin, who had been the backup crew chief for Denny Hamlin, will be the crew chief for Sheldon Creed in 2024. Chandler Smith is going to drive the number 81 car for Joe Gibbs Racing in 2024, with Jeff Mendering being the crew chief. If the number 20 car, which is going to be the car that's going for the Owners' Points Championship, that car will be split between two different drivers. Those two drivers are Eric Almirola and John Hunter Nemechek. As for the final car, the number 19 car, because Joe Gibbs Racing will have 4 NASCAR Xfinity Series teams in 2024, those will be driven by Joe Graf Jr., Ryan Truex, William Sawalich, and Taylor Gray. Let's go through all the drivers in each of the rides and talk about what the chances are. First, let's talk about Sheldon Creed. We already knew back at the Marza week when Austin revealed it, we already knew that Sheldon Creed was going to be headed over to Joe Gibbs Racing. This is a really awesome and a fantastic opportunity for Sheldon Creed. because Sheldon Creed, I think, is a very, very talented driver. I know he's had a lot of struggles in the last couple years at RCR, but it's not like Sheldon Creed had been a terrible driver. Sheldon Creed had been a pretty consistent driver, as a matter of fact, and had been showing a lot of promise throughout, especially 2023 and the second half of 2022. He could have won a few races with his organization, RCR, in 2023, and I think he will, in fact, in 2024, talking about Sheldon Creed, I think he will end up winning a couple races in the 2024 season. I think he's getting his first career win for sure, and I think he might get another couple victories in the 2024 season. Next, let's talk about Chandler Smith driving the number 81 car. I thought that he was going to drive the number 20 car, to be honest with you, but I think this is a fantastic and really good opportunity for Chandler Smith. Chandler Smith, remember, he had a 3-year deal with Kaulig Racing, but of course it was announced right before, I think, the Martinsville weekend that he would not be returning to Kaulig Racing in 2024. So Chandler Smith will be joining Joe Gibbs Racing. I think Chandler Smith may be the favorite to win the NASCAR Xfinity Series title because Chandler Smith had a pretty solid year of Kaulig Racing, but it could have definitely gone better for sure. I think with the experience he has now in working with Joe Gibbs Racing and him being probably in the franchise car, I think that Chandler Smith will have a very good chance to win the championship this year, and I think he's going to be extremely competitive for sure, and I'm excited to see him behind the wheel of a Joe Gibbs Racing car. I think he's going to be a championship threat and contender. Let's go to the number 20 car because there's two drivers behind the wheel, that being, of course, Eric Almirola and John Hunter Nemechek. With John Hunter Nemechek coming back behind the wheel, I believe he's going to run 10 NASCAR Xfinity Series races in 2024, including at Daytona International Speedway. John Hunter, I think, wins a couple races for sure. And Eric Almirola, this is really good to hear that Eric Almirola is going to be back behind the wheel of a Joe Gibbs Racing NASCAR Xfinity Series rider. Remember, we all know what happened in 2007, about 20 years ago, where basically Eric Almirola was driving the 20 car and was a development driver for that team. Actually made his Cup Series debut with this organization, but unfortunately, we all know what happened. Things did not go well, and things went south. But I think him getting a chance to drive for Joe Gibbs Racing again is really exciting. I think that he is going to run around 20 races with this team, and I think Eric Almirola will actually contend for victories on a week-by-week basis. And I predict that Eric Almirola will win probably 3 or 4 races at least next year, and I think that this 20 car could end up easily winning the Owners' Championship. So glad to see both these drivers have an opportunity here. Let's now talk about the 19 car because you've got 4 drivers here. Ryan Truex, let's talk about him first. Great opportunity for him. Wish he was full-time in NASCAR, but at least he's going to run part-time with JGR. I think Ryan Truex wins next year. He's a really talented driver, can get the best out of his equipment, and I'm glad to see he's back behind the wheel of a JGR car. Next, William Sawalich. William Sawalich is going to run a majority of the ARCA races in 2024 for Joe Gibbs Racing. The other race that he's not eligible to run, Tanner Gray will drive the number 2018 car in ARCA. I think that William Sawalich, though, is going to be extremely talented, and I think he's someone who really can do good in the best situations. Taylor Gray, definitely the big surprise for sure that he's going to be behind the wheel of a Joe Gibbs Racing entry. But Taylor Gray, very talented driver, does have some sponsorship coming with him as well, which is a big reason why he's behind the wheel. And Joe Graf Jr., I think Joe Graf Jr. is an ant driver, if you ask me, but he does bring sponsorship and funding, so that's why he's going to be driving the December 19 car. I believe he'll be the driver behind the wheel of his 19 car at Daytona International Speedway for the Xfinity Series. Nonetheless, I think there's some excitement definitely for sure with Joe Gibbs Racing's team. That's probably why it took so long to get this out there, because they're having a lot of drivers come into play. They made a 20-minute video on this whole thing, but nonetheless, it's really exciting stuff, and glad to see that Joe Gibbs Racing for sure has finally revealed their 2024 NASCAR Xfinity Series lineup. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about Noah Gragson, as it was officially confirmed on Wednesday evening that Noah Gragson will be joining Stewart-Haas Racing in 2024, driving the number 10 car. And it was also confirmed that Drew Blickenserfer will be the crew chief for this organization once again. This is a really exciting opportunity for Noah Gragson, considering the fact that I think Noah Gragson is a very talented driver. I think he's getting a really good opportunity here to drive for Stewart-Haas Racing. Noah Gragson, in my opinion, has absolutely deserved a second chance to get back behind the wheel, and I think he's getting a well-deserved second chance with a very solid organization. Tony Stewart even said that they're really happy to have Noah Gragson at the team. in 2024. Now, as for Noah Gragson and looking at what happened in 2023, Noah Gragson obviously, of course, did not have a very good season. Noah Gragson only had 2 top 20 finishes with Legacy Motor Club and really struggled. But to be fair, the first year Legacy Motor Club, that team completely struggled. But with Noah Gragson for sure heading over to SHR, I think he honestly could have a pretty solid and pretty good year with Stewart-Haas Racing in 2024. I think he's someone who does have a lot of potential and some really good capabilities for sure. But because you go back to his Xfinity Series days, a big reason why he's getting this opportunity as well to drive for Stewart-Haas Racing is I think they look what he did in 2022. Noah Gragson won 9 Xfinity Series races, and I think he's going to get better throughout the year as well. Now, what are my overall expectations for Noah Gragson heading into 2024? Well, for Noah Gragson, I think he's going to struggle just a little bit, but I think he'll run a little bit better than he did in 2023 at Legacy. I think he gets 1 or 2 top 10s throughout the year, and I think he finishes around 29th or 30th in the overall standings. Because like I said, when you look at Stewart-Haas Racing as a whole, I'm not going to put blame on Noah's struggles in 2024 being just on Noah. I'm putting a lot of blame on SHR. They have just lost their big piece, and that is Kevin Harvick. And they've lost some big sponsorship as well. They've lost Smithfield, they've lost Hunt Brothers Pizza, and they've lost Busch Beer. Busch Beer is going over to work with Ross Chastain. Hunt Brothers Pizza is going to work, of course, with Joey Logano and Team Penske next year. And Smithfield, more than likely, either will be working Eric Almirola in the Xfinity Series, or they're out of NASCAR completely and focusing on the NFL at this particular moment. So that's a big reason why I think this is why I'm a little worried about Noah Gragson's chances in 2024. In fact, I think SHR in general, they are going to struggle as a whole. But as for Noah Gragson, I think that he finishes, like I said, around 29 or 30 points and gets a couple top 10 finishes. But again, I think this is a well-deserved opportunity for Noah Gragson for sure. I think he's earned his chance and opportunity, and I think he'll make the best of it or do what he can to continue to improve. It is a multi-year deal. Now, one thing that was not revealed today was sponsorship. Obviously, I do think Noah Gragson will probably announce some sponsorship here in the near future. You actually look at some of the fire suits and the cutout of what was kind of revealed, and Bob Pox put the tweet out as well. It's kind of weird not seeing Noah Gragson with sponsors. But again, I think that he'll have some sponsors coming over. My best guess is Black Rifle Coffee Company will likely be one of the sponsors working with him in 2024. I also would imagine that Bass Pro Shops is coming over as well. Again, I thought the big reason the holdup was maybe because of sponsorship, but again, them not revealing it as sponsors tells me they're waiting on a few things. But again, I think this is really exciting stuff. And again, I'm very happy to hear that Noah Gragson will in fact be headed to Stewart-Haas Racing in 2024. I think he's going to make the best of it. I'm happy for him, and I'm glad to see that Noah Gragson, because I think he deserves a second chance. In my personal opinion, NASCAR should have never suspended him, and I think Legacy was looking for some reason to get rid of Noah Gragson. I know all these teams have these contract clauses in there, but we obviously know that it was reported by Jordan Bianchi a week prior to the whole situation going down. They were looking for any way to get rid of Noah Gragson, and it ended up happening. So nonetheless, really good opportunity here, and I'm glad to see that Noah Gragson does have a ride for 2024, and we'll see how he performs in the 2024 NASCAR Cup Series season with Stewart-Haas Racing. So, that is going to be today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my page as well. Links go below that. Comment below your thoughts below on today's episode. How well do you think Noah Gragson will perform at SHR? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And how do you feel Joe Gibbs Racing is going to do in 2024? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Tomorrow on the channel, more than likely, I'll have an updated 2024 NASCAR Cup Series driver lineup video. And then on Sunday, we'll be likely talking about where I think every driver will finish in the Cup Series points in 2024. And then on Monday, we'll have the Stewart-Haas Racing Team preview dropping on the channel. Got a lot of great content dropping on the channel that I cannot wait for you guys to check out. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.